I went to Doug and I said, Doug, boss can't eat this food. He says, what? He says, we got problems with the holding temps. Everything's been set out. They're going to reheat and then serve. And if he eats this, he's going to get sick. And he's like, oh, okay. And that was about all I got out of him. And I thought, okay, I did my job.
Right.
And then we go to the briefing before he goes in for this luncheon and, politicking and everything that he does, And so I'm standing there, and both Doc knew and Doug knew, and he's going around the room, and he's talking to, John Podesta and Madeleine Albright. They all came along this trip, and he said, hey, yeah, talking what he does. And he says, does anybody have anything else, And at this point, I'm looking over at Doug, and I'm looking at Doug, and Doug's not paying attention to nothing, right? I looked over at Doc, and she was doing her thing, and I said, sir, I have something, because neither one of them were saying anything. And I thought, I can't let the president eat this food and get foodborne illness, man. I just can't do it. I said, sir, I have something. And he stops and he looks over and he goes, well, who are you? I said, sir, I'm Petty Officer Cundieff. I'm your food service attendant, on this trip. And he said, well, what's the problem? I said, well, sir, I've been here since 7 a.m. and here's the issue with the holding temperatures and the food that's been prepared. And he says, it's our recommendation that you don't eat this food, because if you do, you're gonna be violently ill. And he stopped for a second, as President Clinton often did when he's talking to folks, for those of us that remember in many ways. Well, what the hell am I supposed to do now, he says. And I thought, oh, here I got the leader of the free world, he's kind of perturbed. And I'd said to him, I said, well, Mr. President, I said, we're gonna have food in your holding room for you. We'll make sandwiches for you, because we bring all that stuff along, drinks, all that stuff. And, well, what do I do with the plate? I said, okay, sir, there's certain things that you can eat, such as the rice, and the vegetable, because there was no protein in it. And take your fork and mash some of that food around, and then lay your napkin over that. You can eat the bread and anything else you can peel. And the consomme, I think they made last minute. There was a vegetable consomme. You can eat that. And I says, and then that way you're not, insulting these folks or whatever, and you're able to make it look like you ate. You're just not eating a lot, And
right.
And so that's what happened. And so what was interesting about that story was that the president listened, obviously, because then he turns to Connie Tramontano, the doctor, and he says, is this true? And she says, absolutely is true. You're going to get sick if you eat that food. So there was some folks there that didn't pay attention to what we had told them, and they ate the food anyways. And they were just sick, just vomiting and everything else you could, imagine.